Good to see you. How are you doing? Yeah, well, good. I love it. Some woos. Oh, it is December, and it came so quick, didn't it? It was like Thanksgiving, December. I mean, like, whoa. And besides the thoughts of family, friends, and gift giving, exchanging things that you got for something you like better. Anyway, not that I ever did that in my whole life. Actually, my attention turns to light. How many of you think about light? We feed horses, and we clean paddocks, and now if we don't bring the horses in by 4:30 and put them in their other stalls, we can't clean those paddocks after 4:30, and it's going to be like 4 o'clock pretty soon. So I really think about light a lot. I also get to sleep in because the animals inside don't get up till the sun gets up. So you know what it was like at 4:30 in the summertime? No, it's too early, please. No, the cat, no, it's time for food. It's time for food. I mean, so light is a big deal. In nature, it's a big deal. And I yearn for light. I think that's why people have candles out and lights out and all sorts of light festivals in the darkest part of the year, is because we crave that light. Like any living thing, we depend upon that kind of light. So the theme for this month is the power. No, that's the wrong one. Jeez Louise. Let's get the right theme, Kathianne. Well, anyway, it's all about light. And somewhere here. Oh, a celebration of light. So this is what this is based on. Ernest Holmes said he would listen to the silence until it spoke and sit in the darkness until he saw light. Light represents understanding, truth, and intuitive insights, and these often come in our darkest moments. So if you're having a dark moment, yay, you might be very close to light. But before I go on about what Ernest Holmes said, I had to look up what light and darkness meant in a book that influences us whether we believe in it or not, and that's the Bible. I'm sorry, you can't escape the influence of the Bible. It shows up in our songs, it shows up in the way people think, it shows up in this idea that dark is bad. That it shows up everywhere because of that influence. And so I looked to see what light meant. Light, the word that Jesus used for light was nuhra, N-U-H-R-A, and it meant intelligence, clarity, illumination, and elucidation. And I what's elucidation? Anybody carry that around? How many times in a day do you use the word elucidation? I was elucidated. I mean, it sounds like something that you took as a medicine and went to sleep. Anyway, I love it now. Elucidation is my new word. It means an explanation that makes something make sense. An explanation that makes something make sense. So if things don't make sense, guess what we're being asked to do is have an elucidation. To have light show up. And cartoonists knew this so long ago, because when they would show that somebody had a bright idea, what would happen above their head? A light bulb. Saints were pictured with lights over their head. Why? Because they had clarity and intelligence, and they knew something that made everything else make sense. Now, wouldn't you just feel better if things made sense? I mean, really. Like, I look at the world and I go, right. But if it made sense, because I'm seeing things from a different point of view, ooh, baby, I would be more content. There'd be a sense of rightness in the world. So darkness meant chaos, and swirling energy. Because when things don't make sense, doesn't it seem like the world is in chaos? Doesn't it seem chaotic? And making sense seems to raise us above the chaos. So the Spirit in Genesis brought light to darkness, meaning it brought sense to the chaos that was going on. It's not like it got rid of the chaos, but it made sense. It's like, oh, something's happening. Do you know that there's a whole chaos theory, by the way, in physics? A whole chaos theory. And how intelligent chaos is? And out of chaos, when you really let chaos be chaos, order emerges. Isn't that amazing? But wouldn't it be great if we could have the illumination to see what is emerging out of the chaos? And then we would be more patient as we waited for it to happen. I don't know, I'm just high on this stuff. You get high on prayer, I get high on words. I'm just like, whoa. So let's go back to what Ernest Holmes said. Ernest Holmes said, and this is so beautiful, that he would listen to the silence until it spoke and sit in the darkness until he saw light. Sit in the darkness until he saw light. What draws to these two ideas really draw my attention, that darkness yields to light and silence speaks. I've had the experience of darkness being light. The literal experience of darkness being light. Other people probably have too. To meditate, you've got your eyes closed, you might be in a dark place, and all of a sudden, there just seems to be light in the room. Anybody have that experience? Enough of you that can be true. For me, it usually happens because one of the places I actually close my eyes is when I meditate in Egypt, and honestly, there are times like it's just filled with light. Like people will say there are orbs everywhere. There's light everywhere, and we've got our eyes closed. I mean, light happens. It can be very, very literal. When I meditate at home, I'm usually looking up, and so there's not that. I don't have a dark place to get lit up. But what happens is then the figurative starts to show up. So not only just literal, but also figuratively, light can start to show up in the darkest places when you are in confusion. How many of you? Let's just have a healing today. How many of you are in confusion? How many of you have a few things swirling around? A little bit of darkness. It's not like it's overtaking you, but at least it's in the corner. How many have darkness in that corner? You kind of avoid it. It doesn't work. Have you noticed? What is it? Resistance is futile. Oh, God. I mean, really, smartest thing ever said on TV. Really. Resistance is futile. So, let me just tell you about a time when light emerged and the silence spoke. There was a time in my 20s when I was working for a company and I was doing really well. I was doing really, really well. I was doing really well. I was in sales, and I was probably the best for that year, the best salesperson there was. I was the only female salesperson. And the work would always go slow in the summer because we sold to schools, and schools weren't really open to sell to in the summer. So it was a sort of a waning period, and I was told by my boss that he was laying me off. I went, what? I mean, what? Yes, we've heard bad things about how like you're too aggressive and people don't like you. And I went, what? Because we always got. We would ask for private evaluations of our work, and we'd put it in an envelope and give it to our boss. But before we sealed it, we'd look at it, and and I knew that people were not dissatisfied with my work. I knew that. It's like, what the? How do you fire somebody that's bringing in more money than other people? How do you fire somebody that gets only good reviews, and yet I'm being told that people didn't like me? How's that happen? That our customers are not satisfied with my work, and yet I know what they say about me. So I went home and I cried. I cried. It wasn't just sniffy. No, you don't want to see me cry, because I don't cry. I blubber. Like, it's awful. Like, and I couldn't stop. It got to that point where you just can't even breathe. It's like, and just almost blackout cry, because I was just like I was angry and sad and confused, and the darkness was upon me because it didn't make sense. You know what? I mean, like, didn't make sense. I was in it. And this went on for at least 2 hours. I know, because I was wondering when I would ever stop. I was crying so much, I wondered if I would ever stop crying, because it was like took me over. I wasn't crying was me. How many have been there? You just can't even imagine ever stopping. Like, this is going to be the rest of my life. And then in the midst of this blubber, where my mind wasn't thinking, all I was doing was watching me cry. So my attention, I was attentive, just watching me cry, not thinking about it, not thinking about my boss, not thinking. Finally just gave up, wondering if I'd ever stop, and I'm just crying. And all of a sudden, this thought came in: you didn't like the job anyway. Well, that just brought me present, because I had just started studying this kind of stuff, which is why I was doing so well at sales. And I thought, I created this? And now things made sense. The light broke. The silence, the non-chatter spoke. And it all made sense. So I thought to myself, if I can create bringing in more money than the other 4 salesmen, and be truly appreciated by the people I serve, and still be fired, if I can create that, I can create what I want. It was in that space of no thinking, because the other thinking was the common thinking. What happens now? How will I eat? How will I pay my rent? All that stuff. You know, that blah, the blah, the blah, the blah, the blah. But in that space of, oh my goodness, I did this. In that space, I could choose what I wanted next. And I outlined all the things I wanted. I wanted to make my own hours. I wanted to be responsible for production and outcome, and not responsible for checking in and checking out. I wanted to be my own boss. And that was the next job I got, and that's the jobs I've had ever since I was 24, since. That's the way I've worked since. The light truly broke. So celebrate the dark times, because it might be just when you're ready to break open and through and go beyond that which has been normal. So now I want to really talk about listening, to listen to the silence. Back to the story. During the blubbering, as I've said, the chatter stopped. the worry stopped. I was too busy just crying. But there's no thought process in crying. How many of you have like a hobby or something you do that when you're doing it, you're not really thinking? That's where you want to be. That's when Spirit can speak. Oftentimes, you ask a question, you have a dilemma, then you get busy doing something, and then the answer starts to show up. Blue suede shoes. I'm having a moment. Anyway. I've noticed that a lot of songs and poets and songs and poets, lyrics and poets, they say things that are so powerful that we sometimes don't pay attention. We're too paying attention to the melody. It isn't a nice melody, but there's that song, and I heard, and I do have this. Do you hear what I hear? How many of you remember that? Do you know that it was written during the Cuban Missile Crisis? During the missile crisis, two people were asked to write a song, and they didn't know how to write a song, so they wrote this. Said the night wind to the little lamb, do you see what I see? Way up in the sky, little lamb, do you see what I see? A star, dancing in the night with a tail as long as a kite. I think that if we are going to be, and I'm going to get to this in a moment, for those of us that start to see the light, the opening, the answer, are we willing to share that with others? Well, I might as well just tell you what I wanted to say. I was going to say it during our announcements, but I have a sister who I love. I have a whole side of my family that I love. And even though we have the same background, we didn't take the same roads. And so I've been assisting my sister financially because I don't know how she would exist without that. And what I realized is, because I was afraid that she would judge me as being too pushy if I shared what I believed, like how my life is different than hers. I mean, she has a better education than I do. She's had more support all her life than I have. And yet she's not in the same place that I am. I thought, am I willing to say, Kathianne, to my sister dear, do you see what I see? Do you see the possibilities? Do you see that the universe waits for you to say yes? Do you see that there is something that wants to bless you and lift you as it wants to bless and lift all of humanity and creation? Are you willing to see that, sister dear? Then, the song goes on. Said the lamb to the shepherd boy, do you hear what I hear? Do you hear what I hear? Ringing through the sky, shepherd boy. Do you hear what I hear? A song, high above the trees, with a voice as big as the sea. When we allow ourselves to be silent enough, that will be a roar. That voice that I heard that said you didn't like the job anyway didn't come as a roar, but it came with profound energy that knocked me back off my pity party and set me on a course that I am so grateful for. You know, I should probably tithe to that gentleman that fired me. Because I am so grateful for the life that I've lived since then. The book, this actually reminds me of the book by Joel Goldsmith, which is The Thunder of Silence, which is, you know, when the silence speaks, it will be thunderous and it will move through your life in ripples and have power. So how do we let the light disperse the darkness, and how do we let the silence speak? So here are 3 things to keep in mind. 3 things. Because I think we should just set ourselves up. You can hear this and go, yeah, that's an idea. I like to set you up. So there's in the seat backs in front of you, there are some places that you can have notes. You know, it says that wonderful packet that Abigail shared with you, or you can put it in your iPhone under notes. There's a note thing. Take care, because you might forget. First of all, we need to remember that we are the light. If we want to seek the light, we need to seek the light within. We are the intelligence and clarity and explanations that we want. That voice didn't come from someplace else. The phone didn't ring. I didn't get a telegram. The voice spoke. Where did it speak from? Me. We are that light. We are that. The explanations, the answers, the power, the sense of rightness lives within us. And just number 1, just remember that. What I seek within. Number 2, learn to listen. You know, I had to be knocked on my rear end to listen. I've had to be knocked on my rear end and listen a lot. There's a lot of times I thought I could plow my way through something. And the biggest advances in my human existence happened when what I faced was so big, I couldn't do anything. Yay! You know, when I work with people, because I love working with people, and they're in a big dilemma, I'm like so excited. And I don't even hide it anymore. People are crying, and I'm like, yahoo! Why? Because there's got to be a breakthrough. All of this chaos must yield to light. See, we don't need light when we're just cruising along. Most of the reason that I have a half of my family, or that one side of my family, are just cruising is because they settled. They didn't want to break through. And the only reason my sister's thinking about it now is because a whole bunch of personal stuff happened. She can't cruise and live. So, yes. And there's a beautiful song that we sometimes sing, which is Word of God, speak, and mean it. Word of God, speak. Word of God, speak. Speak within me. I was really praying that. There's another time I was also just confounded. I love being confounded now. Let's just say, yay, confound. How would you say that? Confab? No, that's not the right word. But anyway. Confusion. I'm confounded. I can't believe it. Yay! There was another time that I had prayed for something, and most of the time, I have got to say, God and I are just like this. This was after the 24 thing, and I was moving along. I had this great career, and I was doing well, and I was making more money, and things were great. But there was this one thing that I really wanted, and it wasn't showing up. And I finally this was it. So tell me what is going on. How many of us will ask what's going on? Because you might find out. You might not like what you find out. So instead of just praying, like I was going up against a brick wall and I was punching it, and there was no matrix. It wasn't falling apart. It was hurting my fist with my prayers, like nothing's happening. And finally I said, so what is going on? And boom, boom. Didn't take long. And once again, it was thunder. And it all made sense. Oh my goodness, it all made sense. And I could shift the way I was looking at things, be grateful for the way things had been, and then redirect my prayers. Boy. Then share what works. Share what works. Don't share what somebody else said. Don't say Kathianne said. Don't, people are quoting people. I quote people too. But I only quote people if I've proved it. I quote people that I've proven. So I am going to give my sister this book, How to Change Your Life. And she can, burn it for heat or read it. It's going to be up to her. But she knows where I am, and she knows where she is, and she knows where we started. And there's one thing that made the difference: the science of mind. That made a difference. And you know what? I was feeling guilty because when I was a born-again Christian, I did come on kind of strong in my family. Because I was told there would be jewels in my crown the more people I collected. And so I gave that up. But then when I got into something different that I thought was more life-giving and life-energizing, I didn't tell people. My own family. Well, my sister needs it now. Really needs it now. And it's not too late now. Because in God, it's always the beginning. Genesis is not something that happened once. Genesis is what's happening all the time. This is symbolic. If any new beginning, the light has to be said, there's light, there's darkness, and there's light, and you need to divide them, and they're all good. It's all good. Ooh, I love this stuff. So I teach Emma Curtis Hopkins. It may be her words, but I live this. I live it. I live it. Jerry teaches Ernest Holmes. Raise your hand, Jerry. Jerry lives, moves, and has her being with Ernest Holmes. Like they're buddies. Like they go together like this. So I think something, and she'll say, and Ernest said on page 275, paragraph 3. So cool. She's real fun at a party. Well, because Ernest must have been a hoot. Anyway, Don Beatty lives the principles that he teaches for spiritual practice in your work environment. That the two go together. He doesn't teach it because he heard it. He teaches it because he lives it. So find people that are living this and then listen to them. And when whatever you're living, and you're all living something, you've all come to a place where you are embodying something, share it. That's if you notice that the way nature exists is it is a sharing ecosystem. Everything is sharing. I mean, there's so much evidence about trees speaking to each other and sharing nourishment underneath the soil. And we don't share what works for us? I'm not talking about proselytizing. I'm just saying, something I've started saying it with my sister, Lisa, if you don't start seeing a better outcome, you're going to get the same outcomes. See something different. So, let's have a meditation. Ready? Oh. Because it has been said, you are the light of the world. That means that you are intelligence and clarity and illumination and explanations that make sense. You are it. So imagine yourself as a candle. For it has been said by poets that were repeated in this thing that we call the Bible, that we are the candle of the Lord. Imagine yourself as that candle. Your body is that candle, that wax. And the wick is your connection with Spirit. And the light that rises above you, that flame is Spirit itself. So there's us, there's our connection, and there's Spirit. And then see the radiation of warmth and light moving out from you. That is your influence for good to your family, your friends, your clients, your coworkers, your community, your world. Now see that light is an everlasting light. And because it's Spirit, it can never go out. Flame on. And so it is.